I love this view though.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You
Yeah.
like it? It's like, oh, it's just some chick. Oh, hello.
Hey, it's Will actually, and yeah, of course I have a podcast. This is All the King's Voices, and I am broadcasting from here in my mother's basement to mansplain the art of drag kinging to you. Now, if you're listening to the audio, you can head over to YouTube, find King's Voices Pod, and go ahead and hit subscribe. That way you can see the video of all these fabulous kings as well as my gorgeous face. And if you're already watching the video, then why not go find the podcast on whatever podcast device you're listening and hit subscribe there. While you're there, make sure you rate and review. All right, let's meet today's guest. Today's guest is the Rebel Kings of Oakland. The Rebel Kings are not your average drag king troupe. For 10 years, they've put on shows on the first and third Wednesdays at the White Horse Bar in Oakland, the oldest gay bar in the nation. The Rebel King show is absolutely inclusive and welcoming for both performers and audience members alike. While some shows require more polished acts, this show stays open to anyone who is interested in performing, especially baby drag kings. It's a space for everyone to stay true to themselves, whether it's as a performer or as a spectator. Their mission is to provide the East Bay community, queer and non-queer alike, a drag king experience with safe, continuous, and creative bi-weekly show to allow for gender-bending exploration through performance art. So hi, everybody. Before we jump into a conversation, why don't we kind of go around and just introduce yourselves, tell us your drag name, kind of who you are, what you do. So whoever'd like to start can start.
Vera.
I know. Why am I like, they're gonna Vera.
I have to call on our names.
Vera. My drag name is Vera.
In capital letters.
Important to remember.
The evolution.
Yes, the evolution. It went from lower to uppercase. And my drag pronouns are they, them. I've been a drag king for I just realized, under 3 years. And I'm one of the, true. We did some mathematical, statistical analysis, Joey Gelato.
I think that's
True.
Yeah.
A bit longer than me.
Yeah. This is Vegas is it's true.
It's there.
And I'm part of the Rebel Kings of Oakland and also the 9-inch males where my drag name is Evanescence. Yeah. And I would say I'm a Armenian American, very queer, weird, does lots of awkward eye contact splits, kind of a drag king. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, I don't know if everyone's screens are the same way, but figure we can kind of just go this way. So Joey and MJ, do you guys want to?
Oh, sure. Hi. I'm Jota Mercury, and I also go by MJ Mercury for my burlesque performing. But for today, I'm Jota. And who are you?
I'm Joey Gelato. Always Joey Gelato. Contemplating on being double scoop if I do femme drag.
Very excited for that.
I've been performing for 3 years as of last September. Let's see. I don't know. I'm Chicano or Chicanx. I personally identify as non-binary, and my drag persona treads somewhere along that. I really like to mess around with pure macho, especially machismo, like Mexican, just gross macho. And then also I like to I'll have my boobs out sometimes when I'm performing, because I find that it's really powerful to be in full face drag but have my chest out, and it looks feminine, but I know in that moment it's very masculine. So to just play a lot with stuff like that for me is very important, along with my racial identity, which is a Mexican American. And more recently I've been more proudly talking about being half Indigenous and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
So my drag name's Joey Gelato. I am Italian American. I try and capture gelato within my persona, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to go for silky-ish, but I don't know. I like to be angsty and do a little punk and do a little leather boy next door kind of feel. I like to bring my kink to the stage as much as possible. My drag persona it goes by he, him. Outside of drag, I am by gender, so I go by she and they. Also he with my drag family whenever they want to call me he. Yeah, I've been doing drag in August of this year, it'll be 6 years. I'm a member of the Rebel Kings of Oakland, also a part of Yeah Girl, also kind of a background in 9 Inch Males whenever they need another king. Yeah.
I should also mention I'm part of 9 Inch Males and Yeah Girl.
little bit of crossover then, yeah.
Oh God, yeah, and Yeah Girl is should I say hosted, called like ran by my drag dad, Javier Miguel.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen Yeah Girl perform.
It's kind of a rarity nowadays.
Yeah Girl started about 4 years ago in my bedroom with Rachel and Javier Miguel, and we were like, let's do a 90s R&B boy band group. So we started
Love
that.
it.
So good. So good. Cool. All right, so we'll kind of, I guess, loop back around. So Jason, you wanna, and then we'll end on Vegas. So
hi, my drag name is Jason Trouble. Goes by he. He's still trying to figure himself out. Done a little bit of everything, a lot of duets, because amazing performers to work with and learn from. I'm the newest of this group and fairly new to drag. I found it in Oakland when I moved here and just kind of fell in love with this group. And outside of drag, I go by kind of they, them, or she, her. I'm fine with both. And I got started by just kind of falling in love with this group and deciding to help wherever I can. And then I ended up on stage. So
the occupational hazard.
Yes. If you hang out with drag kings, you're going to end up being one here pretty soon. Somebody will just throw you on stage. So that's kind of how I got my start. And I'm definitely still pretty shy in front of the stage, but enjoy, being of help wherever I can and working on some new numbers. So.
Awesome.
Yay.
All right, and then we'll keep going this way. So Vegas.
Hi, I'm Vegas Jake. Still Vegas Jake.
You sound mad about it.
Hey, I'm Vegas Jake. Yep, still Vegas.
Well, I'm like the OG of the group, so
Yeah.
I've been doing drag. I started back in Santa Cruz in 2000, so I'm kind of old school. And hello, I'm old. I started doing drag when we only used cork. Yeah, so my character, as you can tell by the name, has a little Vegas cheesy action to it. I host the Rebel Kings show when I can, and I've been a part of Rebel Kings as long as it started, and we've been going 10 years strong this June, which is pretty amazing for a troupe to be together that long, for one. And yeah, I use they, them, she, her type pronouns everywhere I go. I like to say I'm gender queer or gender non-binary, whichever one you want to pick, depending on the day. And yeah, I think I joke, I have been doing drag a long time. I started a long time ago, but I had taken breaks along the way. It wasn't until I moved out to Oakland area when I heard of a drag king show at the White Horse Bar, and it had a different name back then. It was the East Bay Kings Club, and they had put on a long-standing drag king show there. And so I had thought I should start doing drag again, and I watched the show, got involved in the show, performed, brought back the character. I tend to do a lot of like Richard Cheese style songs, so they're always a bit of parodies of sorts. That's kind of my shtick, but I'll let you ask more questions because I'm sure you're going to get into more. So.
Yeah, well, so one of the reasons I'm super excited about having all of you on is because you've each had very different like lengths of time in drag and different experiences with drag. Obviously, as part of the same community, you also have similar experiences as well, right? So one would hope that you are not all, you know, part of the same group but never see each other, right? So I would love to hear, you know, specifically about like, okay, so how did the Rebel Kings come to be, and like what is the difference between what it was then, what it is now, and kind of as and each of you can feel free to chime in, but I'd love to hear like what being a part of this, specifically like the East Bay like drag community, the Bay Area drag community, like what does that look like? So I'll kind of let you all chime in.
So, if we start chronologically, that means that you got to start Vegas.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, let's see. I guess Rebel Kings of Oakland, I mentioned, started because a drag troupe that had a show at the White Horse kind of ended, but the community still wanted to keep it going. So some of us decided to kind of work it out with the bar, and it kind of evolved. We had a contest that had somebody in the drag community who actually came up with Rebel Kings of Oakland. It wasn't a name that just was like, let's call ourselves this.
Okay.
And that was I think our way of bringing the community in, because that was kind of the focus of the show. We kind of wanted to do a different, same type of show, but a little bit different. One, to keep, I think, the drag king performing community alive in the East Bay. Also make it a safe space for folks to continue to learn and understand drag or become a new drag king. Since drag kings about 10 years ago, I don't think we're as popular. I think we've become more popular over the time with social media, and things have changed. And you know, everything's changed in drag, if you ask me, from when I started in Santa Cruz back in the early, 1999, 2000. And so in a good way, it's great. So yeah, Rebel Kings, we used to do a show every Wednesday night at the White Horse. I don't know how we did that, but we managed to do it. And it was pretty crazy at times. I mean, it was the kind of show where we weren't as organized as I feel like we are now. I think with bringing new people involved, and there are a lot of other kings who were a part of the original troupe that have either moved away, or they're kind of like a guest appearance now. Their lives have changed, but they're still always a Rebel King, which is kind of cool. Like, it's not like you're gone and you're never considered a Rebel King anymore. And I think that's what's unique about the Rebel Kings of Oakland, is that I think we've been able to kind of keep that sense of camaraderie and community, no matter where you are in the drag world, and wherever you are in your, whether you want to perform or not perform, you take a break. And I think that's what's kind of kept it going and solid. And then you bring in, new people, and it kind of grew into this whole other thing in a good way. I think a lot of drag troupes don't stay together very long because there's drama or something comes up. And I think we just have figured out how to communicate with each other and be kind of honest and deal with the drama when it happens. And I think it's kept it solid, which is pretty amazing if you ask me, because I think the drag world can be pretty intense at times. And I think we're lucky that we've kind of kept this kind of community focused troupe that, yeah, we might run these shows, but we are very focused on all the people who are involved in performing the show. So it's not just us, or it's not just one person producing the show. It's a group effort, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'll let everyone else say a few words. So.
Yeah. So like, what is the experience of being a part of the Rebel Kings versus like doing other shows, or what have you experienced kind of coming up in drag, I guess?
You asking me or everybody?
No, just question to the room.
Yeah.
My experience was very weird. I didn't even know I wanted to be a drag king. I was hell bent on being a burlesque performer, and I took classes, and I was just like in it. And then I had the opportunity to do like make my burlesque debut and a drag king debut in the same week. And I asked Joey, and it was for like a back to school night. And they were like, yeah, just bring a CD and show up like the next show.
Mhm.
And then I performed. And I used to go by J Mercury because I was going by MJ Mercury, and I panicked and was like, shit, I need like a man name. And I just was like, okay, hack off the M, J Mercury. And then that eventually changed into Jota. Anyway, when I first got into drag, though, it was through RKO, going to an RKO show. Was going to them very like frequently. And then I feel like my deep immersion came from San Francisco Drag King contest in 2017. And that was fucking weird, to be honest. A super weird experience for me. I remember I wrote like an article or something, and I had talked to Fudgy about how he would describe it. And he's like, imagine like a monster truck race, but like with drag. And I was like, shit. So it was like a fucking insane thing. Anyway, so that whole experience was just weird and crazy because like not only was I very like not experienced in the drag king community specifically, but like drag alone, you know, and I entered it just like on a whim in like the lip sync portion. You were with me, and
that was an amazing and crazy night.
It was just so my whole experience was very weird with that. I remember feeling very strange because there was a lot of people who had clearly like been in this game for a long time and looking at me like who are you, like and then I won, and then it was like attitudes changed, and I was like, whoa, this is so weird and strange. And then it very quickly placed me into, I am participating in something in the San Francisco drag scene, which is very loving and nurturing for creativity, but it also doesn't fuck around. And there are politics here, and there's respect. And I came in here swinging it on fire, and even though there's people that I've never met who are just kind of like staring at me quietly, like I still needed to show like my respect because these are like my drag elders, you know, and people that have like, it was such a weird and surreal night for me. And like the following year was really great. I had a really wonderful time with the title. But yeah, it was kind of strange. And then, I mean, I am so grateful that I was asked to join Rebel Kings because that showed me, I feel like, the drag community that I was like truly looking for. Like, and I'm comparing like our troupe to like a Night of Mayhem, you know, of San Francisco Drag King contest. So very different. But that was my full blown, like, that was the night where I was like, this is not a game.
Yeah. I can very much relate. And like realizing oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's interesting what Jota's saying, because when I first started doing drag as an outsider, I didn't live in the Bay Area, and I came into the Bay Area and tried to do a couple of shows when I was younger. And it's interesting that it is such a scene in the Bay Area that if you're, maybe it's changed now, but we're talking back in the late 90s, 2000s, if you weren't from that scene in that Bay Area, San Francisco drag world, you weren't cool enough to get enough props when you performed. And people actually weren't very nice to you at times. Like as an outsider coming in from, not from the Bay Area, but being a drag king in Santa Cruz, you weren't like, you just weren't seen as a very cool, good performer, which always bothered me, and why I never did contests, because we did do SF Drag King contest way back in the day. And it just never felt like a welcoming thing back then, which then made me look at drag a little differently. So when we kind of, I think, formed the Rebel Kings, my head being a host and I wanted our show to be a show that welcomed all people, even if you weren't that great, but you could learn to be great, or you wouldn't feel so like dismissed or something, like you could do drag, it could be whatever it is to you. You might not be like amazing with makeup and fabulous with costuming and have a huge setup, but at our show every Wednesday night, bring a CD and just have fun.
Yeah.
So
Well, I came from Southern California, and I've been like, looking at drag kings for a long time on stage, and I'll tell you, in other areas it's very similar, where it's very sceney. It's I got asked to join a couple of them or to do it, and it just never felt welcoming. Like the group did not feel welcoming at all. It felt like it was incredibly intimidating, and if you weren't perfect, then you didn't even dare try. And the Rebel Kings just have this really amazing little wonderful warm family space that feels very different from any other place I've seen. And I think that the evidence is 10 years of going on and constantly a fuel of new performers coming in. And I think the Rebel Kings are very special in this space, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I keep thinking.
Yeah, no, go ahead, please.
I was gonna say Vegas. It makes me think about like if we were to have a time travel and Baby Vegas came to RKO now and messaged us and was like, "Hey, I'm from Santa Cruz and I would really like to perform," we would be like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!"
No, it's so true. It's so different, and I think it's changed a lot though in the Bay Area over the years too. I don't know if it's not the same as it was in the early years. I think the community, it has changed a lot. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a time where there was once a show called Tranny Shack.
Right.
So, things have changed. And that is at a prominent club that we perform at still.
I performed at that.
Yeah.
Years ago. And the only reason I kept performing is that there was a drag king there that actually said, thank you and welcomed me. It was Jay Walker, who's an old school drag king. They've retired, but they were so kind, and it helped me a lot to get up there and try to do a number, because Tranny Shack was no joke. And I had one little simple little number in my little Vegas outfit, and it was hilarious, and I survived. But
and they're grateful for that.
Even when I started, like, it was like really intimidating for me. Like, I'm like a super introverted person, and I was going to Rebel King shows when I was under 21. And I remember that. When it was like, I remember when it was weekly, and I would go because I knew that it was weekly, and I would try and go every other Wednesday. And then I started dating somebody who was like, used to be a drag king, and then was telling me about, it used to be a drag king in New Orleans called Felix. Her name was Felix McGuire. And then we broke up, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to start going to these drag king shows by myself because I have no friends, and I'm just going to go. And I remember walking up to Dante Damone and being like, hey, dude, like, how do you get into this? Like, do you have to audition? And then Dante looked at me, looked at the stage, looked back at me, and was just like, does it look like you have to audition? Oh my God.
Old school.
Yeah.
Dante Damone's in this picture.
That is, is that Stefano in the front?
Yeah.
What the?
Mickey Finn, Stevie Ray, Jeannie, Logan Comes-Well, some of the OGs.
Oh my God, precious.
Amazing.
I don't know how you guys did an every week show. That's ridiculous.
Wild.
Yeah.
It was not as organized coming from an audience perspective.
Here's Baby Vegas.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
You were
Still have outfits.
Good.
You look so
nice.
disgusting, and I love it.
Wow.
Notice it's an actual photo. It's not on a phone.
Right. You're not sharing your screen on that one.
Nope. Joey, what you were saying reminded me of like my start as well, that I used to just come to all the shows, and when I was like back when I was in grad school, so like ages ago.
I don't remember that.
Oh my God, it was like 2005 to 10. And I used to like I went to all the shows. I loved them. I used to be the tip girl a lot.
Yes.
So I have on paper photos of my ass just crawling. And I look at myself, I can't even recognize myself because I look like super femme-ish, whatever that, you know, and I'm just like, you know, ass over tea kettle trying to pick up all these wine.
And no fanny pack though.
Yeah,
No fanny packs, pre-fanny pack. I mean, my God.
It was pre-fanny pack, and when we
Even
asked the audience to be a tip person, a tip
Yep.
monitor.
Mm-hmm.
even when I started drag, you were still doing femme drag.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, no, I started, you know, back in the day, and Justin Bieber joined the roster of the show for a while. And I know, and was shy and asked me to be like the girl in duets. And then I was a backup dancer for Mama's Boys based on doing backup for Justin. That was an era, moving right along. then I met, you know, that's where I met Randy.
Who wasn't part of Mama's Boys?
Everyone has had a small intersection in that Venn diagram, moving right along. And then I started doing like the girl part with Randy Puck for a while. And I recently found, and then I was like, wait a second. But I recently found a photo of me like from the Mama's Boys era, like with like a backwards hat on and like a mask outfit and no drag face. And I'm like, wow, like the opportunity was kind of there, but I'm really glad that thank you for asking me to be one of the Rebel Kings before I was in a super king mode. Like that's really precious to me. And I feel like that was how time was meant to flow there. And it's just really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, so that's actually a really great transition. So one of the things that I'm so interested in is, especially as we enter this like weird phase of drag where everybody's kind of like fluid and non-binary, and drag doesn't necessarily have like anatomical reference anymore. Like this isn't the 90s, right? So I'm curious, like what makes drag king performance different or special or definable? Like what is being a king? And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious, like how you maybe embody it or how you've seen it embodied, or, you know, feel free to riff on that. So
for me, everything, my goal as a drag king is to challenge everything you thought you knew about masculinity. And as long as, and that can mean a variety of things. Like that can mean having my boobies out. That can mean being super taped down, having my chest hair showing. That could mean so many different things. But everything that you thought you knew about men or women or your idea of gender goes out the window as soon as I hit the stage.
I love it. That's
True.
great.
True.
Okay, I'll just go now. God, way to fucking
Right at you.
throw it out there. Okay. For me, like being a drag king, personally for me is more of like a headspace. It's just like, it allows me to be in this certain headspace and allows me to be able to be like confident in my male side of my gender. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's cool. So there's both a performance and an identity aspect
Exactly.
to it.
It's a part of an identity.
Yeah. That's cool.
I think it gives you a space, and this is kind of recent, you know, what I found in the very short time is that it does, I had never been able to like give voice to that male part of me, or that person, that part of me that felt more masculine, that was like, I've always presented as very masculine, but there's a whole different experience when you have, you know, a jock strap on and, you know, a beard on, and with the way that people see you and experiencing that differently, as like, you know, the way that people experience me different when I'm wearing a beard or whatever. And it's like, it's just interesting to see what the world treats you like as a dude. And playing with that and being able to like run with the confidence that brings not naturally.
Yeah. So it's performance, it's identity. It's also the way that other people experience you, not just your experience of it. Yeah.
And getting to see how markedly different it is. I don't know that you get that opportunity to explore that in any other form. Like we don't get to walk around as men in our normal lives, but for a moment, for those nights when we're in drag, it's like, whoa, the world looks at you a little bit differently, or they perceive you differently, give you, different kind of get out of your way when you're walking through or whatever, and not so playing with that.
Yeah.
Vegas was made a reaction, but Jason, that really when I'm thinking about what drag kinging is for me, it's all about kind of playing with the gendery bendery feels I already have, and I feel really like myself in drag and out of drags. That's why I go by Vera, because it's still very much me. But now that you were talking about that, Jason, it reminds me of, I really do, for me, it's what I enjoy kind of is how the people who attend drag shows and other people in the drag community, I love it that they see this face and that they think this is Vera, and that when, honestly, it makes me feel great when the makeup is off and people are like, huh. And I'm like, right, I know. I could be like this. Honestly, if I could just be like this and my face, this is getting weird. Please definitely put this in whatever paper. But if I could have two faces at once, that would be kind of the best situation. And the fact that people look at my face and are like, without drag, and think, I associate this with the drag face. That makes me like full of joy.
Yeah. I have a similar experience, so it doesn't sound crazy. It sounds very relatable. Like, could I just
remember that one time when you texted me while you were on BART and you're like, oh, this is what it feels like to be cruised as a guy. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Great.
Wow.
Yeah, Vegas, do you have any thoughts, especially kind of watching how drag kinging has changed in the last couple of years? Like, what did it mean to be a king, and has that changed for you?
Well, I still have the same costume, so that hasn't changed very much.
You have different
photos. I'm like, I still have that coat. And that's the same ruffled shirt. Anyway, yeah, I think for me, I've always seen my drag kinging as a performance. I'm I am a little bit of a different person, I think, on stage. And my character, I feel like it's not very masculine. It's not very feminine. It's a little bit of both. I flirt with everybody in the audience. I can be very, very gay or whatever. I don't, I could just I just don't really care. And maybe it's just because of where I am in my life that I'm very okay with my center of self. So when I'm on stage, I'm pretty much like a character, I think, it's not like I feel more like a man or more like a woman or bi gender. I'm just me every day. I'm really not my character. I'm not Vegas Jake during the day or at home. I'm not that person. And I remember I had colleagues from work come and see me perform once, and they're like, holy fuck, who's that? So I go, I don't know, it's a stage and a whiskey. I don't know what to tell you. And so I think it's interesting because over time, I think when I first started doing drag, it was more about my identity and more about like, oh, look, I can actually, blur my genders, and I didn't know I could do that. And then as I've gotten older, it's just more of like, well, I just move through the world as me, whatever gender that is for me. But I think on the stage, it really is mostly a performance for me. I don't focus too much on the identity gender piece of it so much as I maybe did in the earlier years. I tried really hard to make it look a little bit more like I looked like a guy or whatever, like I wanted to portray a little bit more of that. But my character also does really funny, cheesy songs, and I'm sort of making fun of myself and the songs that I choose. So it's a little bit of that too. But I think over the time, I think what everyone was saying is true. I think what drag has also done, and particularly drag kings, is it has allowed, I think, people to really explore their gender.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that in a way that, because I think one's identity is very fluid, right? And so I think it gives people that space and that safe space to either jump and understand that their gender is fluid, or for some, you know, we've had a lot of our troupe members and people who have fully, you know, felt like they were a man and want to transition to be a man. And I think the stage had brought them closer to that actual identity of who they really felt like they always were deep down inside, which I think is very powerful for a lot of folks to get to do that and explore that aspect of themselves. So
For sure. So theoretical question. What do you like? What is masculinity? How do you perform it?
I don't know, masculine.
You guys.
Like for me, it's but this is very specific to my experience. But when I am challenging masculinity, I'm challenging like Mexican culture in particular, and there's just a lot that ties into that, which comes to like men are better. Men are like you're the man of the house. You do everything the man says. You cook and clean for the man. You provide, or he provides for you. You don't ask any questions. If he has a wandering eye, you deal with it. Just all of those awful tropes that you often see in movies, especially with hot Latin men. They're spicy, It's all funny and good and like humorous for a bit, but like there's my humor and fun comes from like challenging that and being this nasty. My whole thing is like being your nasty Theo uncle who's just like, ew, you're actually really gross.
Yeah.
It's like, what the, get away. So for me personally, it's challenging all those ideas and kind of really putting that down and also in like truly just putting it down, just being like, this is fucking ridiculous. Look at me, I'm ridiculous. Isn't this ridiculous? It's kind of stupid, isn't it? And like at the same time, there's another aspect of my drag that's like really highlights the feminine parts of my body, and like it becomes very much about my body in particular. So yeah, there's you know lots of ways. For me, it's both cultural and both very physical.
Yeah.
And like challenging masculinity means having my tits out sometimes.
Which is awesome. Yeah. Other thoughts on masculinity and like as a performed art?
For me, I feel like how I not challenge it, but I guess how I show masculinity is like my drag is very like I go from like bratty teen to like this Italian cheesy trying to be smooth, not really you know, kind of thing, and then I'm like a leather daddy, so it's like an evolution of like masculinity, you know. So it's like I try and get all the age groups within one character within different roles. So like I'll go from like a bratty teen boy who came home from school and like wants to masturbate to George Michael secretively, or I'll just try and swoon everybody in the room, it doesn't matter gender, and be like that 20-year-old guy that's just like, hey, I'll buy you a drink, you can buy me a drink, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll go to like leather daddy, where it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, no, like I own the room, you're gonna watch me right now, and then maybe if you're lucky, I'll flog you.
Yeah.
Like a whole bunch of different kinds of masculinity, but they're all kind of pretty gay.
That's great.
They're pretty gay.
I love it.
I've actually found myself, my first like drag like brother was actually Riley Coyote, and our characters kind of strangely fell in love when we were performing over a series of numbers. Vera termed us relationship, and so you know here I was like expecting to present this like masculine form of myself, super straight, because I typically date women, and all of a sudden my character is gay, and I'm like, what? This is not even at all. But I found that what I've found in that is that the audience just loves the crap out of masculine on masculine drag drag numbers. And so it's just been a lot of fun because you can play with even with sexuality within drag, you know, because there's actually not a whole lot of us that perform in any kind of feminine way. So we have to do our duets and, you know, bring a whole lot of masculinity, which makes us gay, or, you know, so it's a whole like fun play with that.
They apparently like father and son drag too. It's you, Joey. Looking at you. Joey and I. You just go way back, you know. Joey, I really influenced the leather daddy in him.
Yeah.
Look at them.
I know, dude. You just have these like ready.
You gotta be prepared when you do an interview.
I'm impressed.
I'm gonna give Joey one of these so he can have his father on his dresser.
Right line.
So good.
It's okay. I get my butt from my other dad.
Vegas, can we all get a photo, including Will, of that? Can we get a copy of that?
Of that one?
Yeah.
Of the specific one?
There's
like a
I want that one, yeah.
There's like a whole series.
See,
Oh my gosh.
This is a good one right here.
Yeah.
I knew you had a stack of photos.
Yes, a stack of pictures of Joey.
No,
That's not me.
Oh my God, that is Vegas.
That's what I'm saying. I'm his father.
Joey, turn around.
That's a young Vegas right there.
Hot.
What'd you say, Mira?
I said,
Yeah.
turn around and show your butt so we see the other parentage.
Oh, exactly. Show the parentage. There we go. There it is. The best butt ever.
Well, I think that's something that's, you know, cute that I hadn't seen before, was this element of drag family and drag dads and all of that, which is like one of the sweetest things with all the new kings that come in. It's like, oh my God, I have some like mentor figure that is gonna like help bring this person out. And I love that idea that creates this family, and there's all kinds of weird relationships that show up because of that. But
Yeah.
So true.
What did Joey say?
Thomas Peep.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Children.
My child's like, you only have one child. You're not having another.
Mira, how many children do we have?
Oh God.
I feel like
We
Zeus
have
a forehead.
we have a couple just, you know, as with you and me as parents, and then I have like
Vera's been
I'm
busy.
your number one. So,
naturally.
yeah.
I only have two.
Yeah.
Randy Puck.
Joey and Randy Puck.
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know Randy Puck
The
was
rest of
either.
them, I'm
That's
just
not-
uncle and dunkle and grandpa.
And drunkle when you're with the extra.
Thank
whiskey.
you, drunkle. I like it.
Uncle.
When you're-
Yeah.
That's Lee Crow all the time.
That's
though.
Lee Crow all the time, yes.
I've not gone there yet.
That's awesome. I'm super jealous. That's one of the things that because I lived in the South Bay, so I was never like close to the drag community. And one of the things that kills me is I never really had like a drag parent. I think the closest thing I got actually was Hota, you and Chico like showing me how to like put on sideburns or like use spirit gum. Like literally y'all were part of how I ended up on stage not looking like a complete fool. I mean, I still made a fool of myself, but that was on purpose.
I think you saw my first drag appearance as that creepy 70s salesperson that was just that.
Oh, gosh.
The makeup was so bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I had been a queen before I was a king, so like I had some idea about contouring, but it was even like I think at that first Drag King contest in 2017 when you were like, "Hey, sideburns, think about that." I was like, oh, right? No,
Well,
obviously you didn't say it like that, but
No, I wasn't like
no. But you were like, here's, you know, like you were like, oh, you know, if you try doing this, you can actually like look like you have sideburns, and that'll change the shape of your face. And I was like, mind blown.
It's
Like,
like I had very first met you as Dee Dee at Body Political, and that was like my very first experience was very queen, very femme person.
Yeah.
Like, going through the whole Drag King contest experience with you was just like I said, you were right there with me through all the mayhem. It was very fun.
yeah.
And it was also at a time where I had a lot of folks who were like, I don't want to say picking apart. Whoa, I don't want to say picking apart my drag, but being like, you're new, so I'm going to tell you every little thing. And Lee
Yeah.
Crow was someone who was very much like that. Lee Crow was someone who was also very much like, who was like my sideburn person, who was like,
Yeah.
you need sideburns. This is how you color them in. You're going to use acrylic paint with a stippling sponge. And that, who was the person like, who pulled me aside and was like, I love you so much, but the fucking bump on your head under your wig's driving me fucking crazy. So I'm going to show you how to braid your hair along, upside down along your head so it goes on smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, one time Lee Crow was like, hey, I've been seeing pictures of you. Here's a tie clip, kid. And I was just like, no.
I mean, honestly, like that is sometimes that's like the help that you need is like those little details totally changes everything.
No, it truly does. Truly.
Lee Crow gave me cufflinks once. I didn't have any. I was like, I always wear it like this. Free.
That's awesome.
Lee Crow just sounds like a guardian angel.
Pretty much.
Asshole.
Or an asshole. Both.
Oh my god.
Both. She knows he's both.
Yes.
All aspects of Leo.
I feel like I'm also still learning a lot from my brothers. Like, for example, I recently learned how to throat contour from Hotel Mercury. And I'm never going to be over it. Throat contouring is where it's at. And I also just want to throat contour a lot because of the way it sounds. But
Sounds so weird.
it does. Throat contour. But I feel like I just am constantly learning. And when I started, I think I contoured it all. Like, I think I just put the beard on, which I still love. And it pretty much still looks the same, predominantly because it's my actual hair having a mascara party with itself, but
yeah,
And
and you know,
changed.
no, go ahead.
No, I think the makeup stuff has changed a lot in drag. I mean, when I started doing it, it was mostly spirit gum and you still do this, but I feel like the makeup and cutting up your own hair or crepe hair or something, people still do that, but I think the makeup has changed a lot. Like I don't contour. That's like I don't know. The contour, it's like I try, but no. But you know what I mean? It's just like, it's just changed a lot, right? And I think it's that wanting to make the face look almost more masculine. Which when you go back to your talk about masculinity, which I find very interesting because it's I don't know, others can talk about this, but the contouring is what that's about. It's changing your face to look more like a guy. That's how I sometimes see it, which is totally great. But it's interesting how the makeup world, I think it's changed a lot in drag king because, it's gotten even bigger with different types of contouring and different colors and like,
oh my gosh,
like a whole other world.
Look like fucking Degas paintings. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
and it's like a realism. It's like realism.
The glitter beard has gotten like super big.
Oh yeah. There's some kings out here in Wisconsin who are just so freaking talented. Like their makeup, I look at it and I'm like, well, this took me 20 minutes and I'm ashamed.
I envy them. I envy them.
See, and that's the part that shouldn't happen because see, what ends up happening is that there are people who are really good at makeup, right? But not all of us are, and not all of us maybe want to be. But the pressure of thinking you need to look like that type of king, I think is kind of a bummer because that's not, it's performing, it's playing with gender, however that is to you, right? If it's a crazy makeup and you want to go all out, that's awesome. But if you can't go all out and the most you got is mascara and your own hair to glue on, then go for it, And you don't know how to contour, and you can learn how to contour with YouTube now, but it's just that pressure that ends up happening because you're like, I don't look like that.
Yeah, it can be hard. I mean, one of the things I like about the Rebel King shows, and part of why I felt okay to get up on the stage with you guys too, is because it was people at every single level. It was very open mic night in the sense of like I was seeing, I think y'all did a group number, and then there were people who had been kinging for like years, and then there was somebody who was brand new, and I came to the show and was just like, Oh, wow. There's like a whole world. It's not just, the one thing you see on YouTube or whatever, right?
Vera is incredibly good. So is Vegas about welcoming those new performers. It's almost like they welcome you to mess up and they, love you harder for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. So
I also, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Please.
No, I was just thinking about drag kings and how they also, I feel like we put on a show. We really put on an act. Yeah. What does Randy Puck always say, Hota and Vera? The tableau, or what is it?
Yeah, tableau. We always finish with tableau in our group act.
I love, so that leads me to my next question, which is, so people say drag kings are boring. Obviously those people are wrong, but like, what is it that makes kings so interesting? Like, what is it that you can say, like, theater, when somebody comes at you, right?
I am a tiny little woman, and I go out there, and I go out there and I look like a tinier little man. Somehow,
this is very true.
I managed to dominate an entire room. And that is just pure silliness. If you can't tell me that there's like humor and like, we're fucking spectacles. Drag kings are absolute spectacles, and we aim to be. And there's people that like do a lot more or a lot different things, not more, but different things with their drag. They can get political. They can give all these wonderful messages. We've done that sometimes with some of our group acts, and like, just, I think at the core, like, speaking for myself at least, like, I'm a fucking spectacle. I know that I can deliver a huge laugh to a room.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Totally.
Like, have been in the audience.
Like, in drag, like, I feel like there's more of a fascination, and this I think is rooted in quote unquote traditional drag, like drag queens, but a lot of it's rooted in who looks super passing. And like, for drag kings, like Vegas, you say like it started off a little more like that of looking the most manly you could, but it seems like it's evolved into this like celebration of gender in theater.
Especially in the Bay Area.
Yes, especially in the Bay Area.
If you go other places, it's not like that.
And
really.
like the production here in the Bay Area, and I mean, I say this naively because, to be honest, I haven't been involved with too many other things aside from Beehoff, which is an insane production like value. But like production here in the Bay Area, people put so much thought and time and energy into that, and there's so many little theaters in like the Tenderloin that like still offer the spaces that like we need. And I don't know, I feel very special about San Francisco drag in particular, and the love that people put into their shows. And like there's a difference between like the love of the show and the love of like the profit, because it's still a party business and you can make some money off of it. But like for the people that are trying to do that, or like trying, like, I don't know. I can't even say that I know anybody that is really trying to do that. Like their faces aren't out there, at least.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what I've seen differently between, especially like the drag queen versus drag king community is like, I think there's a lot more performance. It's not as much about the costuming. It's not as much about, I look fabulous and I'm going to walk around and I'm going to collect your dollars. And I feel like that's, a lot of the drag queen shows that I have seen is that there's not a whole lot of storytelling. The storytelling is in the costume, and with masculine type costumes up until recently, what we see differently now in some of the performance costumes that we see for kings. But I think the storytelling, the performance aspect of it, I think that in some ways we have to work a little harder because of the lack of costuming that you actually have to show, create a performance that's people want to watch, that you can't just like have this sexy dude typically just kind of walking around collecting dollars. That's not going to like get the energy up. Whereas like glamorous queens, it's like, oh my God, you're so beautiful in these three.
And it's like drag kings have this like ongoing reputation within the drag community of being like, oh, you're just a lesbian in your dad's suit. And we're all like, no, most of us aren't lesbians.
This is not my dad.
This is not my dad. I don't know him.
I gotta say, these eyebrows are a little bit my dad. Just gonna put that out there. I really agree though with like the performance aspect, and that I think there's what I've seen when what I love about drag king performance is that there's so many elements going on. There's a performance aspect. There's a like a character, a performance, a character. If there's a certain level of wittiness, if there's a certain level of like inherent sarcasm, there's always like you can engage with multiple elements at once. It could, and one element could be the costume, and one element could be the audience engagement. I see a lot more audience engagement and like that, or maybe this is just me personally, that's what I like to focus on a lot, audience participation engagement, than just going to collect a tip. Like I want someone to look at me and like be seen and realize that like I am singing to you. And yes, that can get weird, but if it gets weird, it's consensual and it's also funny. And then you might message me about it later, which just happened, which is so cute.
I literally got in the front row of our stage. Beware.
That was hilarious. And I was like, "You're welcome, anytime."
Oh, Lord.
But I feel like kings do a lot of work in that area, and I feel like kings also do more duet group number stuff. So that I've seen, and all of this is me being biased because I do other shows that are mixed. But I do a lot of king only stuff, but I see a lot more duets and group numbers and collaboration because we all, and I mean, a lot of queens love each other as well, but we all love each other and are obsessed with each other's art. That's what I see in the Bay Area and in Rebel Kings particularly, that we think each other are the best and we can't wait to see each other perform again or perform with one another. Like nothing could be better to me.
The audience loves that. I mean, to be honest, it's so fun to watch collaborations with 2, 3, a group number. I mean, we get out there and like totally silly, and yet the audience just loves us no matter what we do because there's 5 hot kings on stage. Like that alone by itself just,
it's also like the audience not only gets to see you grow as a like performer, but you get to see different relationships grow on stage with drag kings. Like Vera and I have only done one duet together, but like it's growing, you know. Bass and I have done a couple duets together. We've never done a duet together, but like Mickey Finn and I, like we've done numerous amounts of duets together, and it's just like we kind of grew that into a relationship, you know. And then they got to see
we got Tubby friend,
and then, you know, they got to see like that relationship grow, and it's interesting, and especially with the regulars that like know us and know us individually, and then see what we come up together is like exciting, and it's new.
Yeah, I love that. So we're coming up on our hour, but before I let you all go back out into the pandemic quarantine,
Our living room.
Exactly, right? So exciting. But I just, is there anything else that you feel like we haven't touched on, or something that you feel like the world should know about the Rebel Kings or about drag kings in general? Or
Maybe burlesque shows need to book more drag kings and drag queens.
Cosign.
I can't help but think of our like Hubba crossover we did on like our New Year's Eve show with Jim Sweeney.
That was awesome.
And like honestly, and this goes back to what Vera was saying about us loving seeing each other's art, but it could have just been us in that room and it would have been fucking amazing. And it was the complete opposite of that. It was sold out, it was packed, it was great. And like the fact, and it goes back to what Jason was saying, is like people love to see those hot kings on stage. They love to see those like duets. Like they saw Vegas and Joey do it. They saw me and Vera duet.
Yeah.
Like having kings in those spaces that are usually for like boobies and pasties and like rhinestones and G-strings is like the shakeup that the entertainment, like the local scenes need.
Yeah.
And people like different forms of masculinity, not just like cis dude masculinity. Like they want to see other masculine people be hot on stage.
Yeah,
we got a whole bunch of new people from that one show that were like, what?
Yeah. People, and there are people that live in the East Bay who are like, wait, you guys do this at the White Horse? And then they come and it's like, whoa, shit, okay, this is fun.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's cool about our show too, is it's very diverse audience, which I
Yes.
always think is fab. That I think sometimes drag kings, queens do too, but there is quite a diverse group of people that come to see drag kings.
Yeah.
Because when we host the show, we engage the audience, you know, by talking to them and asking them funny questions, and I think you learn a lot about who's in your audience, and it's just always fun. I think that's what's so much fun, is like, you're like, and you're from where, you know? And anyway, it's just cool.
Yeah, I think that's so great. So, okay, so the Rebel King shows are the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays now, not every Wednesday.
First and third.
First and third.
But
That's right. 2nd and 4th is
we do have a show on the fourth Thursdays.
4th Thursday. That's what it is, right? And that's at Moby Dick,
Moby Dick.
right?
So currently, we're, along with everyone else, going to digital platforms until things ease up. And we're all in it together, and we'll go from there, I guess.
Yes.
We'll have some interesting drag in showers.
Yeah.
For a little while.
I feel, just to say one more thing, honestly, I feel like our digital shows are just representative of what we are, because they feel just like our show. I kind of blew my mind.
props.
But and no cleanup for Jason Trouble. But like,
You took my job away, though.
I have to perform.
We had the epic glitter cleanup the last show, so I figure I've got my hold on cleaning up for a minute.
No, it wasn't glitter. It was fake blood with Mylar. Like,
What was that?
It was Mylar confetti that someone dumped on liquid, which then stuck to the floor.
We put
Then they said sorry and ran off.
Oh my word.
We stayed until like 1 in the morning.
No, Vera
stayed
stayed
till the very end.
The very end.
We left
I
at
got
like
every one of those pieces of glitter up. There were thousands of them.
But I'm a Virgo, and I have a slight, but I realized that if you make a tape glove, if you put tape inside out on your hand and you just patted everything, you could get actually every last one up off the floor.
And that's what she did to the entire cabaret room of the White Horse.
That floor has never been that clean.
No.
I was impressed by all of you watching the video of that. I wasn't there.
we
really
dumped
great.
our bodies.
And
And hold them around each other.
Yeah. Being a Virgo, though, I probably would have helped Vera. So, one thing I want to say is I want to thank you, Will, for this, because I think this sort of stuff is what helps get the history of drag kings and the stories out to the community of folks who maybe are wanting to learn more or understand that the drag king world is one world and drag queen culture is another. Like it's all intermixed, but it's also, there's a little uniqueness to each one. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And I'm just so grateful that all of you were able to make time in the middle of a pandemic to come talk about kings. So
what better thing to do?
What are we doing? Calendar's open right now.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you liked it, why not rate, review, and subscribe wherever you feel like rating, reviewing, and subscribing. If you want to learn more about today's guests, head over to facebook.com/kingsvoicespod, or check out the comments or the description in the YouTube channel, Kings Voices Pod. There I'll post all the links to everything you want to know about today's guest, and you can find them from there. If you are interested in becoming a guest yourself, then why not shoot me an email at willxullydrag@gmail.com, or shoot me a message on Facebook at facebook.com/kingsvoicespod. All right, so that's it for today. And remember, keep your toxic masculinity to yourself, but share your drag with the world.